Yes, all of those things did. And it just sucks. It sucks when it's the end. I know. We've talked about this, but let's move on. Right now is, though, as we bring up DJ Moore, the focal point of discussion has been whether or not this should have been a penalty. DJ Moore, in the most miraculous catch, arguably, in Panther history. The only catch that can be considered better than this throw and catch is only because of the game that it occurred in. The Steve Smith catch in the NFC against the Rams. It's not the actual play that was better. It is just that the moment was bigger. This, though, is arguably I don't know, man. Is this the best single play in Panther history? I mean, we need to do a poll. I think Deshaun Foster run in NFC Championship.
No, I mean, listen, I say it's up there. It's not
best
my
single play.
Favorite. Well, yeah. It's not my personal favorite. I think that we've had a few that meant more. But the reason why we're bringing this up is because Tony Dungy, former Super Bowl winning head coach, he works for NBC. He came out and said our NBC rules analyst, Terry McCulley, says according to the written rule, this should not have been called a penalty because Moore was not on the field when he took his helmet off. Yeah. So, it was so many times throughout this season, boys, we have had this discussion. Oh, the referees really screwed us on this one. Oh, no, this time, the referees, they were the reason that we lost. Dude, if any one of those games could actually be blamed on the referees, to me, it absolutely has to be this one, man. And it furthers the point that these referees enforce the rules at their own discretion. Like, they're not getting all these calls correct. They're calling all the right pass interferences, the right roughing the passers, the intentional grounding. It's like a crapshoot whenever you have these different referees calling games, and there's no consistency in them because none of the NFL referees are full-time employees. So these are the kind of results that you're gonna get, man. And it sucks so bad that DJ, who has been so underserviced, not only this season, but some would even say his entire career as a Panther, probably undeniably makes the biggest play of his entire career, and he's fucking ecstatic about it, getting up in the face of Falcons fans. This man is amped, and they throw a penalty that should not have been thrown. Dude, it's unacceptable.
Was it 15 yards? Is that what it was?
A 15-yard penalty, which ended up being a 48-yard extra point.
Greg has some information.
Yeah, so this is debatable, right? Is that a lot of people have been debating this, is whether or not, so you get this Terry McCulley, but first of all, we get Dean Blandino telling us all kinds of bullshit about rules all the time. The other thing is that he took his helmet off outside of as he's walking out, right? So it's like on the border, number one. Number two, he walks back into the end zone. So I don't know that. Now, Greg, there's one more layer to it, correct?
Yes, because the penalty wasn't called if he walked off the field, I get that. That it does say in the rule book, like there's two or three stipulations to it, and it labels them out 1, 2, 3, and they don't have to all three happen. It's just if one of these happens, and what people are focusing on is the walking off the field and the play being dead. Because yes, if they walk off the field and the play's dead, no, it's not a penalty. But it does also say in the rules you can't do it during a celebration.
What about
that? And don't forget, Cam had this is what happened.
Is the one thing that makes it a penalty, and I hate to agree with it because I think it's a stupid penalty.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think we're an over penalized. I think the NFL's an over penalized league at this point. And I also think I also remember this is what Cam got in trouble for.
Yeah.
In that Cardinals game. You remember in the Cardinals game, he goes, "I'm back," and he got a penalty in that.
Yep. So did Stephon Diggs during the Minnesota Miracle. Remember when the playoffs when Minnesota beat New Orleans, he catches the pass down the sideline, took off. The
There's a
helmet to
clip
do
of
it.
Terry McLaurin running around in his
No
last
flag.
games.
And their argument is that that's after a timeout. That doesn't matter. The clock was still running for them.
Right.
The clock wasn't running for us. That means it was the end of the play. So after a timeout or not, that's irrelevant. Whether you take
And
your
it was-
helmet, that was
and
a
it was-
celebration.
And right, it was a part of a celebration, was it not?
That's the only
So
thing that
they're
makes
not
it a bad
even
rule.
they're not even enforcing the rules fairly amongst all football teams. I'm not gonna
That I'll
sit up
agree
here.
with.
I'm not going to
Well,
sit
because
up
it's
here
subjective.
and say
I mean,
that
this is
have it
why they
out
want.
for us. I don't think they have it out for us, but there is definitely no consistency in how NFL referees officiate this game.
This is
They're-
the only way they can control a narrative. On a
Well,
sport.
yeah.
This
I mean,
the
it is
only
subjective.
way.
Look, there's always going to be a layer of the human element in life, and this is why some people want baseball to move to the robot strike zone.
And some people really don't want it.
Right, is because sometimes human error makes the game kind of fun in a way, right? Is like particularly in baseball, like an umpire caught like you start to learn that the outside strike is accepted, or you know what I'm saying? They gotta, and so some people it's just been part of the game so long that they're okay with it. I think my opinion on this is that if this human error is part of the equation, which it is, I think that we should use flags and reviews to keep the game as honest as possible, not to impede the fun and the excitement and the process of the game. So, like, this is what I'm saying is it's one thing to use review to overturn plays that were clearly whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, you saw it, that's a catch. Somehow they missed it. Human error made this, and the game would have been better if they got the call right. I don't want us to use like, all right, when you slow down replay to the millisecond, the ball's always moving. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they've had to adjust this. Like, I don't want it to be like, oh, there's one blade of grass touching his foot. He's out of bounds. Like, I think that's too much. I think it's like, hey, the eye is like, if we go micro, like we're going down to, it's like I heard LeVar Arrington talk about this, is he don't like when people say my kid's 18 months. He's like, your kid's 1. He's like, oh, are they 1?
Right.
Hey, no, they're 1. He said, what if they're 23 months? He says, they're 1. And he goes, and then, and his argument was this, is that if we're going to do 18 months, what stops us from doing weeks? What stops us from doing days? What stops from doing minutes? What stops us from doing seconds? And I think these types of calls where it's not a taunting, it's not bad sport. I don't know. It's like, to me, this ruins the fun of the game. And I don't know if you've ever seen Boondock Saints, but when the gangster is getting a sandwich and he's like, he's smashing the face, he goes, they take all the fun out of the job. You know, it's like they call it a no fun league for a reason. You know, it's like this ruins moments.
The argument with this one, though, is some might say that this made it more fun because you go into overtime. We get the interception. We missed that field goal. Marcus Mariota has an opportunity to rush it down to the 25. And Young Wei Koo comes in there, kicks that 45-yard field goal, and it felt like redemption for them after having just almost lost the game. Like, some might look at that game and say that was entertainment, right? And so that's where, you know, the narratives thing that Greg talks about kind of comes into play. The reality is, it is a stupid rule. If it states that celebrations can't be a part of it, then it's sure, okay, that's fine. But if it states, you know, if those are separate things, as long as, like, if it's a part of the same concept, I could see where it could be interpreted in a different way as well. So, and that's what I don't like. And I disagree with you on one part of like, if a blade of grass hits his, like, if he steps out and one blade of grass is what touches his foot, he shouldn't be considered out of bounds because of it's, you know, that's just taking it. The problem is,
Are all blades of grass uniform of length?
The reason that I bring it up is because you have to keep in mind, this is like people's livelihoods, right? The difference between this win, that person, that blade of grass touching his foot or not touching his foot, could be the difference between somebody going to the Super Bowl or not going to the Super Bowl, right? So when you're talking about that,
He's
Like,
not
you have to,
wrong.
it has to be
Nah,
black
he
and white.
is.
It cannot be a subjective thing. But that's where that's where we also agree that that's why these calls should
It's
be
not
able to
math,
be reviewable.
dude. This is not math.
It
Tony,
sort of is.
I agree with Tony on one aspect of it about this need to be changed, but I do agree with CK and Cody about that. I think that how specific you can be with it is the reason you have that. However, you should be able to, if a referee doesn't know a rule or does something that's against the rule, first of all, you should be able to challenge anything you want to. And you only have 2 challenges. It's not like it's going to hold up the game.
I agree that.
You should be able to challenge anything you want
I
to.
think the NFL should have a
penalty, a
challenge
call.
too
Agreed.
from
But
New York.
yeah, there should be a guy in the booth that whenever the referee makes the wrong call because he doesn't know the
The
rules,
AFL did this.
beeps down and says, "Hey, by the way, that's wrong. Go ahead
Let's
and
catch
do
it
this
at the
way."
commercial
That
break.
would've
We're
changed
going
the
to
game.
commercial.
Seconds.
That's what needs
We're
to be
going to
changed.
commercial.
It could take
Other
10
than that,
seconds.
the
It doesn't
replay is
even need that
okay. You
much
should
time.
be able to challenge everything.
Yeah,
you don't
why
even
is
need
it
that
so
much
hard?
Here, can I
Like-
bring up one thing though to decimate since he said I was wrong. CK.
Kind of wrong. You're half.
Then obviously, if it's black and white and it's math, then Jericho Cotry didn't catch it.
Oh my god.
I think
How do
they've
you
And
answer
he
those
caught
two
that shit. I think this is sometimes you just the eyeball test. That's a catch, bro. And then they're like, "Oh, he's rolling to the ground. Did the ball move? Did it? But no, that's a fucking catch. I just saw him catch it.
I think
Let's
I
not
think those-
slow it down to the infamous test. It'd be like this. Is like, woo. You know what I mean? Like
Luckily, I think they've defined a catch enough for us to be able to eliminate.
they've
a lot
gotten
of the
better at it.
subjectivity.
They did
Right.
improve it after that.
So I think that part is, again, now it's back to being somewhat black and white. There's only so much you can do with stuff like that. But if a blade of grass touches a foot and that blade of grass is technically gray because it's out of bounds, then he has to be out of bounds. Because what that then leads to is if that ref calls him as inbounds because and they review it and that blade of grass touches his foot, but they hold up the review because they can see that it touched his foot, but it wasn't it was subjective. It's so close enough to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? Well, if it was called the other way, if it was called that he was out of bounds, well, now there's
If it's a single blade of grass, we shouldn't be looking at it that.
But you understand my point,
Sorry.
right? You're talking about like being that specific. I think you have to be when you can be that specific. I think it has to be that specific.
I don't like this. I think that the burden of proof is too. That makes it no fun. All right. Did the refs screw us?
Yes.
Yes.
Tell us why, Greg. Because you don't think it's just this play.
I don't think it's just a play. I mean, we were talking about the halves. I think when we were watching the game in the cave, we were asking about like what the penalty percentage was for the first half. I think we only had 1 penalty for like 5 yards in the first half. And then we ended up with 9 for 75 in the game. And I think like 6 of them almost in a row were on one drive. That was a key drive at the end of the game. The one where DJ
How
broke
many?
fast. We had 9 for 74 was the final.
Do you
I
know
think we only had
Denver in
1
that
for 5.
London game had 10 penalties in the first half?